Hey everyone.
Hey there, folks.
This is Amanda.
And this is Rita.
And you're listening to
I Don't Know Her,
the podcast where we talk about women and some other folks that you've probably never heard of.
But you should have. And today you will.
So, let's talk about fashion.
Okay. Target.
Yeah.
I got a bone to pick with
Target.
I was looking for a nice shirt because I was going on a professional dinner. Like, it was a meeting that I was having with my bosses, and I didn't really have anything like summery, and it's warming up, and I wanted like a nicer shirt. So I was like, oh, I'll hit Target. They always have something cute. And I went, and like, when did everyone start wearing like our gunny sacks back? Wearing like these big ruffles with like the tapered wrist, like it's stretchy on the wrist, but it's tight.
Oh,
and then it billows out to this big bell.
Oh, no,
with
bell
lace.
sleeves?
Bell sleeves are back. Everything was like big and poofy, and it had like a bib on it with lace. And I was like, are we all of a sudden from the 1900s again? Like 1901, and I'm going to go out to the field and shuck some corn? Like... Everything was terrible. It was terrible.
Yeah, I've been noticing the fashion trends right now are all of the things that when I look back at my teen years, I go, oh God, I really wish we hadn't done that.
Yeah, and I don't get it.
Have you noticed that currently remember when all of our t-shirts did not, it maybe skimmed the top of your jeans?
Yeah, you had about that. It was like that cute little peak of belly
yes,
that you would
and if
get.
you raised your arm, you were given more than a peak. You were given half your damn torso.
Yeah.
That's back. So like every girl who walks into the library, I'm like, oh no, your clothes don't fit. I just feel bad for them, honestly. Like, they think it looks cute right now because everybody is wearing it. And I felt that same way when those tiny little shirts, like they look like dolls shirts.
They were... I think if I remember, they're called baby doll shirts.
Yes.
Yeah.
However, like the latter part of the baby doll shirts weren't technically those. They were more like regular shirts, but they were still not long enough. Mm-hmm. It's just like, I remember when I got to college and I would pull a shirt out and I'd be like, why do none of my shirts fit? Because they were all like...
Is this a shirt? No, it's a headband. Oh, wait, no, it's a shirt.
All miniature shirts. I think that's why I made those damn t-shirts out of other shirts, because I couldn't find any shirts that fit
long enough. But I couldn't find a damn thing. And I was there with my child, and he was like, that's ugly. That's ugly. That's ugly. And then he literally pointed out one, and he was like, you couldn't pull that off. It's what he said.
Your child is getting a little too advanced.
He told me I couldn't pull it off because I was too old for that kind of look. Yeah.
Yeah. You should tell him age is nothing but a number. It's a state of mind. I'm 22 in my mind.
So this thing with Target actually turned into a trending hashtag.
Did it?
Yeah. It's called Target Country Dress Challenge. Peasant dress or something like that. And so it's literally, you look at the hashtag and it's all of these women in the Target peasant dress in all different kinds of poses, like doing like the influencer post, they're by an old barn and they're holding their hat and they're not looking at the camera.
I love the trend of not looking at the camera.
Nobody looks at the camera anymore.
Funny fucking trend.
But a lady that I know, she's like a local food photographer here in town. She did the challenge, but she's got a bunch of chickens. So she did hers and she's like holding all her chickens.
So basically they're farm girl dresses from like Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah. And it's like there's thousands upon thousands of these pictures of the women in these dresses.
I would not wear that. You know what else I won't wear that a lot of the youths are wearing? Those like baggy style jeans, but they're too short. That trend, I don't fucking get.
They crop them.
Yeah, so they're all three of the worst things about any denim, like from any ages. The high waist that gives everybody mom butt, that's just not a good look on most people unless you have a real full ass.
Yeah.
When you have a real full ass, you can maybe pull it off, but it's really borderline.
Yeah.
It's like either you're going to look like, a soccer mom, or you're going to look like a model. It's hard to tell. And then they're also baggy, like Jinko jeans.
Yes.
But then they're too short. I don't get, like, those are all the three worst things about denim of the past. And they were like, you know what we should do? Put them into one pant. To me, it feels like a long con on teenagers. It's like a joke. And so all of the teens and 20-somethings, 5-10 years from now, are going to look back at their photos and be like, I got played. That shit's ugly. It really is ugly.
I never really thought like the fashion that we grew up with would come back like this.
I thought some of it would, like Reality Bites era. Mm-hmm. Seattle grunge scene era. Because that shit
Janine Garofalo's whole look in that movie.
So
perfect.
Good.
The lunchbox for the purse. I mean, come on.
So good. Everything about that movie, iconic. Including Ethan Hawke's being a complete ass.
He is a complete ass in that movie.
The real villain. But like, I just really, I really feel bad for them. Like I love Rip Torn jeans. Mm-hmm. That look, solid. But Rip Torn jeans when they're too short for you and look like you outgrew them. Look like you had a growth spurt over the summer and mom didn't buy you new jeans for fall. That's what that looks like.
And the peasant dresses, not having it. Dresses. The bell sleeves, not having it. The bib tops. I was like, this is a nightmare. I was like, I just wanted a nice shirt. And I ended up just wearing a sweater because I just
it was like, no.
Find anything.
I don't think there has been a moment in time as bad in fashion except for the early aughts. The 2000 to 2007 era.
When pleather and... so bad. Shiny metallic material.
Yes, and those, like, we would put, like, 17 tiny ponytails on the tops of our heads.
Yeah, so you look like the crazy daisies that people put in their front lawns that spray water everywhere. Just you had water shooting out of your head.
Yeah, that time, and like really bad makeup and thin eyebrows.
How many clippies can I get in my hair? 30.
How about the fact that we used to wear actual children's barrettes? Mm-hmm. Those little like lambs and stuff in our hair. Like that was not at all infantilizing.
Right.
So children of the now, I'm sorry for your choices. In the future you will look back and think, why did I wear that?
Why did I wear that?
And it's okay. We've all done it. We've all followed trends that were really bad.
True story.
My advice, actually, I learned this sometime in I would say like my mid-20s, is always lean classic. If you're in a really eclectic dresser, whatever you wear will always look cool. Mm-hmm. So like go for it. But like if you're somebody who follows trends and like that's what you wear, I would advise you, especially if you're mid-20s or later, to lean towards whatever the version of that is most classic, that you won't look back on and be like, oh God.
Ooh, why'd I do that?
What am I wearing in that photo? But also, those are fun memories to have too. I love looking back on shit and being like, wow, was my hair actually that color?
So I remember I have one of those photos, my best outfit. And this is probably 5th grade, 6th grade, Rita. And I had those glasses, the ones that, like the turtle.
Oh, the tortoiseshell?
The tortoiseshell ones with the really thin copper frames. I had those. And my look was a white t-shirt, but it was a boy's t-shirt. And my best vest.
You were a vest wearer. My best friend Carol wore vests, and I was so fucking jealous of her vests. But my mom was like, those are hideous. We're not getting them.
No, I had a vest that was like probably autumn colors, and it was embroidered with like paisley and it had satin on the back.
Oh, of course.
And then I would wear white shorts with white socks and sandals.
So cute. So here for it.
That was my best outfit. If I was going somewhere, I was like, get me the vest.
My best outfit is actually an actual, like, head-to-toe look a girl walked into the library with the other day. I was
Really?
like, I'm very jealous. I had this really nice fitting, like, just like, you know when you get a shirt that really hugs you in all the right places and just looks perfect? It was like that. But of course, it was at the time when all of your shirts didn't quite fit. So it was very short, too. And I had this really simple navy blue skirt, like thin material, like flowy material with these tiny little white flowers that I wore with like chunky black boots.
Oh, you got to wear the chunky boots. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just thought I looked so fucking hot. And a girl walked in wearing head to toe that outfit this week, and I was very jealous because I could no longer wear that. But at one time I did and looked very cute in it.
Nice.
Now I'm like, now my style icon is Winston from New Girl. That's who I want to dress like.
I don't know if I have a style icon of somebody who I would want to dress like right now.
My life goal has always been to look like and dress like and have this style of Dwayne Wayne from A Different World.
Yeah.
I thought he was the fucking coolest shit. I wanted to have a Whitley on my arm, apparently. Never got there, though.
So hopefully you've enjoyed our
foray into
blast
fashion.
from the past for fashion.
Yeah. Anyway, we love you all. Hopefully you're having a great time trying to find fashion this spring.
Oh, it's going to be a tough one.
Good luck. So, are you ready for my person?
Yes, I am.
Do you know who Tempest Storm is?
Hell no. That is quite a name.
Yes.
Storm.
She was the highest paid and most successful burlesque dancer and actress, otherwise known as the Queen of Burlesque.
Ooh.
Yeah. So we're actually going to have a little bit of a contemporary with Fanny Bryce.
Oh, okay.
Tempest Storm was born Annie Blanche Banks on February 29th, 1928 in Eastman, Georgia, which is a pretty small town. Like right now in 2020, it has like 7,000 people. So it was probably, 3,000 or 4,000 at the time.
Whoa.
She grew up really poor. It was a very small southern town. It was during the Great Depression.
Oh.
They lived in what she called a little country house with no electricity or an indoor bathroom. They had an outhouse.
Oof.
In fact, as a young girl, she worked in the cotton fields picking cotton. Later on in life, she told a story a lot about how she used to run down the road to meet her dad when he was coming home from working in the fields. And one day her aunt happened to be at the house and she saw her dad coming down the road and was like, "Daddy!" Mm-hmm. And her aunt just whips around and says, "That's not your real daddy."
What the hell?
Like, first off, adult, take a whole fucking field worth of steps back. Because, like, no, that's not how you approach a child about this very intense subject. But it was true. The man that Tempest had known to be her father was not her real dad.
Okay.
It was her stepfather. And Tempest later said that that was the moment that turned her life. And that before that, she had been a happy little girl. And everything after that is not.
Why would that woman do that?
I don't know. I don't know what the motivation there would be.
No.
She asked her mother about her bio father once she found out about it. But her mother refused to talk about this man.
Okay.
In fact, she wouldn't even give Tempest the name of her father.
So obviously a very sore subject.
Obviously. And Tempest actually spent the rest of her mother's life trying to get information about her bio father from her mother. And her mother just remained tight-lipped until her death.
I wonder if he was just a bad guy.
I don't think so.
No?
So after her mother died, she was going through her mother's stuff. And her mom's purse that she wore every single day and carried around with her had a photo of her and Tempest's dad in it.
Oh.
That she had carried around this entire time.
Weird.
Right?
Yeah.
Which made me feel like you do that when that's like the one who got away.
Yeah.
So it seems strange that she didn't want to tell Tempest about him.
That's odd.
Isn't that a conundrum?
Yeah, I'm trying to rack my brain. Like, why would you do that? Like, maybe it was just too hard for her to go there.
So I watched this incredible documentary about Tempest that I'm going to reference quite a few times in here. And the documentary was made when she's in her like late 80s. And in the documentary, she gets in touch with a genealogist who starts doing some work for her to try to find this man. Mm-hmm. He's obviously dead by this point, right? Mm-hmm. Like, he's not going to be alive unless he's like in his hundreds.
Yeah.
But the genealogist does find him. His name is Owen Banks, and she ends up finding his grave.
Oh. And
tells her where the grave is. And she does go and visit her bio dad's grave for the first time. But also the genealogist discovers that this man had married someone else and had kids with this other woman and had been married to this woman for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
So like he was very much capable of being a father and a husband. And so she still doesn't know why that family and not hers. Mm-hmm. Like remains a big mystery in her life.
That would be so like stressful. Just never have an answer.
Impossible to live with, you know. So Tempest is, I think, living in this household where her mom is closed off and cold. And she also has this stepfather who is not great. So one of the things that really fucked up Tempest's life, and I feel deeply in my soul connected to this, is that she developed large breasts at a young age. Mm. And that, of course, made her a target of her classmates who relentlessly bullied and ridiculed her. And she would wear really tight bras, like I am right now, in an attempt to press them down and make them smaller and less prominent. And they would still like call her names and things like that. Obviously, when you develop really young like that, you also get unwanted attention from boys and men.
Oh, hell yeah.
As I did as well. And Tempest very much experienced that. So trigger warning, like, whoa. Okay?
Okay.
If you are triggered by stuff about sexual assault, you are definitely going to need to skip ahead about a minute. When she was 13, Tempest had made herself a very pretty white dress that she wanted to show off. She made this beautiful dress. She put it on and went for a walk towards downtown. The sheriff's son drove up next to her on the sidewalk as she was walking, and he had two other boys in the car with him. And they grabbed her and they shoved her in the car. They held her captive inside the car, drove her into a secluded area, and each of the boys raped her in turn. And then they put her back in the car, and on the way back to town, they told her that if she told anyone what happened, they would kill her.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
13 years old.
13. She kept quiet for many, many years. She did not tell that story. And she dreamed of getting out of Georgia with good reason.
Yeah.
And her big dream was to go to Hollywood. And I think of like when you're a kid and you experience trauma like that, and the trauma of not knowing your father, and the trauma of having a cold and distant mother. Mm-hmm. She had siblings as well, and they had different fathers. So like there's a lot of disconnect happening. She's very poor. Mm-hmm. That imagination, that imaginary life, like that is your refuge. Yeah. That's your way of coping.
It's the fantasy, you know, where you get to go, and especially in Hollywood, you can be anybody you want to be.
Anything and anyone. Mm-hmm. So that's really what her dream is. And she gave an interview with Roger Ebert, one of my faves of all time. I love Roger Ebert. She gave an interview with him in 1968 in which she said that every day of her life was hell in Georgia. She said her stepfather was, quote, the meanest man in the world. Trigger warning again. And one night when she was around 14, she woke up to him on top of her. She kicked him off and miraculously was able to get away from him.
Oh, wow.
She never told her mother what happened, but she wanted to get away for good.
Yeah.
So at 14, she left for Columbus, Georgia, and got a job working as a waitress. And at this restaurant, so her family is trying to get her to come back. And she is only 14, so like they have legal standing over her. She met a Marine who would come to the restaurant a lot, and I think she must have told him what her situation was, because he was like, we should get married, because then when you're married, your parents no longer have property over you. Like, you're not their child anymore. You're technically an adult. So the two of them get married when she's 14, but they both were terrified.
If he's a Marine, then he's got to be an
adult.
19 or 20, yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely some form of an adult.
An adult.
But he was scared. She was scared. The marriage only lasted 24 hours. And
what were they so scared of?
I think just that, like, they just got married.
Yeah.
And like, holy fuck, what are we doing? And she ended up going back home.
Mm-hmm.
The following year, she began working at a hosiery company that like makes pantyhose.
Mm-hmm.
And she met a coworker's brother and once again got married. So this is her second marriage. That marriage lasted just 6 months before she decided to get the hell out of Georgia and head to Hollywood. So there are a couple conflicting stories about how she got out of Georgia. One said that a man paid for her fare to like take a train to Hollywood. Another said that a man drove her there, and that same man got really mad because her first job in Los Angeles was working at a restaurant called Simon's Drive-In as a car hop, you know, the women on the roller skates.
Oh, yeah.
And she would stay after work and like hang out and shoot the shit with people. And he got so mad that he chased her over a wall with a knife once.
Whoa.
So I don't know what story is true. I don't know if this was if maybe multiple stories had like crossed. That sounds like a very realistic thing that could happen.
Yeah.
Considering how she's been treated by men in the past. Mm-hmm. So she arrives in Los Angeles with $600 in her purse, and that is it. She gets this job as a car hop and then later on as a cocktail waitress, where she had lied about her age so that she could get the job.
I'm going to say she's only probably, what, 16?
Yeah, she's only 16.
Jeez.
And it was in this job that Tempest got her first opportunity to break into show business. So she had been trying as she had been in LA, but like, you know, if you don't know someone, if you don't have an in some way, you're just another pretty face. So one day, this is what she said. One day, a man in the lounge told me I ought to go into show business. Well, that is exactly what I thought. But as I was as far away from getting anywhere in Hollywood as I had been in Georgia, I asked him if he had any suggestions. He said, sure, become a stripper.
Oh, okay.
At first, Tempest wasn't even sure what that was.
Oh, no.
It is like 1950 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, let's see here. I can't remember when
it's like left and right. People are just taking from her.
Yeah, she arrived in LA in 1945, I believe.
Okay.
So this would not be a time at which people were really familiar.
Yeah.
I mean, like a Southern girl.
Yeah.
Who's from a small town in Georgia.
16's not going to know what that is.
She just didn't know. And the man explained it to her, and she was like, no way. My mom would disown me. Which is probably true. But the man knew Lillian Hunt, whose name I have heard of before. I think she might be on my list or something, because as soon as her name came up, I was like, why do I know that name? But she was a talent manager and was the one who like ran the shows at the Follies Theater. Oh. So you can tell we have some crossover here.
Oh, yeah. Heck yeah.
Lillian saw something in Tempest when she met her. So this man gets her an audition basically with Lillian Hunt, a meeting with Lillian Hunt. And Lillian saw something in Tempest. I think the thing she saw was her very large breasts, to be honest.
Yeah.
In fact, she told a story about how Lillian, the first time they met, made her told her to take off her clothes. And she was like, no. And Lillian was like, look, I'm trying to see if you got any scars or burns or weird marks or whatever. Like, I want to know. Like, that's a qualification to get this job.
Yeah.
So she took her top off and whatever. And she like looked down and she's got these, pretty large breasts for her age. And she's like, are they too big? Like, is that going to be a problem?
Yeah.
And Lillian was like, honey, in this business, there is no such thing as too big. But she did tell Tempest that you need to cut out men, booze, cigarettes, and sweets. And that she needed to slim down and straighten her frizzy dark hair.
Oh.
Tempest did all of that and was hired by Hunt to be a chorus girl at $40 a week, which was the most money she'd ever made.
Does she know how to like sing and dance and stuff?
No.
No?
Not yet.
Not yet?
They're going to teach her real fast.
Okay.
After a few weeks, Lillian offered her a raise to $60 a week if she would perform a striptease. So the first time she went on stage, she was obviously incredibly nervous and didn't know if she could go through with taking off her clothes.
Mm-hmm.
But it turned out she didn't have to make the decision of whether or not she would strip because the gown made the decision for her.
Oh.
It wasn't fastened correctly, and as soon as she made her first dance move, the whole thing just dropped to the floor.
Oh my goodness.
She said that like that's the first lesson she ever learned that took her all throughout her career was like, just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
You can't stop. So after that, she was like, this is great. One of the things she said in the documentary over and over and over again was that the thing she loved about being on stage was that she got to be that little girl again before everything got fucked up. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Because
she's in control. Off. She's in control, though.
Yes, she is in control. And people adore her and love her. And I think that adoration and that love...
It really just fills a void.
Well, and if you think about the ability to be like an entertainer, a creative, an artist, you have to be a little delusional. Mm-hmm. To think that you're somehow more special and more unique than someone else.
Yeah.
You have to have that sort of unending well of confidence in some way and delusion, and that usually comes from delusion.
Oh yeah, because then that when you internalize that, it shows in your performance. And people eat that shit up.
Yeah. I was actually talking to my son about that. He was talking about how his dating life is a mess. And I was like, you need to be confident. People are attracted to confidence.
Confidence is very attractive.
I told him, I was like, I think I was like 16 when I just started to like pretend that I was very confident. And after that, I was like, I never got rejected. Everybody I ever asked out went on a date with me. Because they just thought I was so confident, well, this person must have their shit together.
Yeah. That's exactly how I bartend.
Yeah.
Is super confident. I literally sometimes I'm just like, okay, going on stage.
Yep. You are a little bit of a performer and you have to act like you're able to take them as it comes. And so I think that idea of her being able to be, I don't even know, a more pure version of herself or something might have been the draw to being on stage. So at the time, she is still going by Annie B. Banks. But Lillian was like, you need to change your name. You need to have a stage name. And she was like, okay, well, do you have any suggestions? And Lillian says, yeah, how about Sunny Day?
Nah.
And she was like,
that's just
a
little
one?
Too campy. Yeah.
It just doesn't fit her personality either.
No. And
she said, what about Tempest Storm? And she was like, yep,
there
that's it. So at age 17, Tempest Storm is born. Her big break comes a few years later in 1952 when she was asked to appear in an event called the Mickey Awards with Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, who were titans of Hollywood at the time.
Oh, hell yeah.
So the Mickey Awards was this like spoof kind of the Oscars. It was poking fun at how stuffy the Oscars had
I'm
become.
imagining if Jerry Lewis was there.
Yes. It's absolutely goofy.
Gag after gag. Yeah.
And all of the awards were like really silly. Like one guy won an award because he'd gotten the most phone calls. And so they had specifically went to Lillian Hunt and said, we want a girl for this specific award. Who do you got? And she was like, I have Tempest Storm. And like they even like interviewed her like she was a real movie star coming out of this like Rolls Royce. Like she rolls up in a Rolls Royce and is being interviewed. And she wins the award that night for the biggest props in Hollywood.
Okay.
I mean, it's funny. And she thought it was funny. So I guess it's funny, but it also is a little bit squicky.
Yeah.
At one point in the documentary, they play like, you know, it's interspersed with like old footage. Mm-hmm. And at one point there was this like, I don't know, television show or movie or something. And they called her Hollywood's pleasure chest.
Really?
That one really bothered me. Biggest props in Hollywood, at least I could be like, okay, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But
pleasure
chest
okay.
is disgusting.
Yeah.
But after this appearance on the Mickey Awards, her career just fucking takes off.
Oh, wow.
She becomes a favorite burlesque dancer of like these really famous people. Like Mickey Rooney would bring his wife to go watch her perform on a regular basis.
Nice.
So she becomes not only like a really famous burlesque dancer in the burlesque world, but like all of these Hollywood people are going
like she's the girl you gotta go see.
Yeah. And in fact, in 1956, she was offered a $100,000 a year, 10-year contract with the Brian Engels burlesque chain.
Wow.
Making her the highest paid stripper in the business. So, Lucas, please tell me what $100,000 from 1956 is in today's money.
$100,000 in 1956 is the equivalent of $967,201.85 in today's dollars.
Yikes.
That's so much money.
That's a lot of bread.
I mean, $100,000 a year right now is a lot of money.
Yeah.
This is 60 years ago.
It's a lot.
55.
Yeah. And she snatched it up, I'm imagining.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And in fact, she legally changed her name to Tempest Storm. She was one of the few dancers who ever did that, whose stage name and is their real name.
Is their real name now.
Yeah. So in 1957, she became Tempest Storm for good. For years, she performed at El Rey, which was a burlesque theater in Oakland, California, and she was touring the burlesque circuit all over the U.S. She also appeared in dozens upon dozens of men's magazines. And she even reached her dream of being an actress when she was cast in a lot of burlesque films. One was called The French Peep Show, Paris After Midnight, Striptease Girl, and her most famous film, Teaserama, which was with Betty Page.
Ooh.
It's very cute.
I want to watch that one.
They do this really dumb, like, hair pulling scene that is just so cringy.
I never really understood the appeal to... There was a lot of that in the 50s of, like girls just, like, pulling on each other and, like...
Yeah.
Hitting each other and stuff, and it's like, why do you want to see them fight? Like,
even porn in like the 80s and 90s did that.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
I don't.
What is in the sexual fantasy
violence?
Of that?
The violence and the sex,
and it's not real violence. That's the thing. Like, I don't like if you were playing with somebody who had like they liked that kind of play, you know, that fetish. Mm-hmm. That's one thing, but it's like, oh my god, oh, like I don't get that.
I don't either.
I don't know what the appeal is for men. The two men who listen to this podcast.
What is the appeal?
What is the appeal of that? Why would you even care? It's so weird. Oh. In fact, she hates this.
Oh, she does?
Yeah, like later on in life, she was like, I'm so embarrassed. Yeah, she's very embarrassed by this like hair pulling, slapping thing they did in this dumb movie. So she moves to Portland, Oregon in 1953, which I guess had a pretty booming burlesque community.
Really?
And that's actually the last burlesque show I watched was in Portland, and it was phenomenal.
Interesting. In Portland, eh?
Yeah, which makes sense to me because they have so many strip joints.
Well, yeah, they're like home to like one of the only vegan strip clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, you can get really good food at a lot of the strip
Oh,
clubs.
yeah, a lot. Yeah.
So some people like literally go there for food and then they'll be like, oh, this is neat. I went to, Abby and I were in Portland a couple years ago for, I think, a race that I was doing. And so the night after the race was over, we decided to go out and we were just like, let's go to a gay club, like whatever, let's go find a cool gay bar. And we walked to this gay bar and there's this line outside and we like walk up and they're like, are you here to go to the bar or go to the show? And we're like, oh, well, we're here to go to the bar. And they're like, okay, well, then you can come in. So everybody else who was waiting to go to the show had to stay outside. So we go into the bar and we sit down and we're having drinks. And then like behind this curtain on the other side of the bar, everybody starts cheering and clapping and hooting and hollering. And if you went to the bathroom, you could like kind of see what was happening. Mm-hmm. And when I start seeing that there are mostly naked people on stage, I was like, oh, we've made a mistake. And so I come back to the bar. I'm like, Abby, there's a fucking strip show happening on the other side of that. And she's like, no way. And then the bartender overhears us and is like, there's a late show tonight. I'll get you in. Like everybody else is still waiting outside to get into the next showing.
Yeah.
He was like, I'll get you in. So we got into this show. We were the first people sat. And we got to go to this show, and it was, one, a fat positive show. So, like, there were many different sized bodies. It was also a gender positive show. So there were people of all kinds of genders, people of all kinds of races. And it was so fucking fun. It was just joyous.
Yeah.
A joyous celebration of bodies.
That sounds amazing.
It was incredible. And it was one of those things where, like, we didn't plan it.
That's awesome.
And it was just perfect.
Yeah.
And it definitely got us a little interested in each other. I think there was something really about that, like, celebration of bodies. Everybody was just so happy to be naked that it was like, I should be happy to be naked too. I think that's the power of burlesque.
Yeah.
You know, I think there are the people who go to burlesque because it's, you know, curvy girls with pretty bodies. Mm-hmm. But then there's also a whole other set of freedoms with burlesque. And most burlesque, in case you haven't been to a burlesque show, they don't get completely nude. Mm-hmm. Most, not all, but most dancers leave like at least pasties on and maybe a little G-string. Mm-hmm. And that was the way that Tempest also performed. She never got completely naked. And in fact, she was famous for talking about how she didn't believe in getting completely nude because she was like, men don't actually want that.
That's true.
They like something to be left to the imagination.
Well, it's very desirable. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you can't get all the way.
All the way.
You're still left with something.
Well, the last show I went to was in Seattle, and man, it was so long ago. And the dancing was amazing, and I was just enamored because I was just, you know, it's wonderful to watch somebody who's beautiful do something beautiful. Mm-hmm. But then there was a lot of people who were like, there was one very slow, very quiet, like started very quiet, and she had like the classic big fans and stuff like that. It was very sensual. But then there was like people in the audience that were like trying to be extra raunchy, and I felt like shouting and stuff like that, and I felt like if you're so uncomfortable you have to make noise, maybe you shouldn't be here. Maybe you should just sit back and just take this all in. You know, you don't have to. Yeah, she's taking her clothes off.
Yeah,
you don't have to. Yeah, baby. You know,
that bothers me.
Yeah, that bothers me.
Kick all the men.
Yeah, I was like, fuck that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always like, you know, this isn't that. This isn't that.
This isn't that. Yeah.
So she was in Portland, the sort of new burlesque sort of scene that's happening in 1953, and she got hired to work at the Star Theater. She met and married her third husband, John Becker. And Tempest actually left the Star Theater to go work at the Capitol Theater because John had bought it and he wanted her to be the headliner. Well, His ex-wife, who was also a burlesque dancer, gets hired at the Star Theater, the one that Tempest had left, under the moniker John's other wife. Like that's what would be that's what would be on the marquee was John's other wife. And it started what was known as the Burlesque War, and it was covered in Life magazine in 1953.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Imagine that article. What was that about? Her third marriage did not last long, and Tempest moved on after a year, but that was her longest marriage so far.
A year?
Yeah, the first one was 24 hours.
That's right. 24 hours, 6 months.
And a year.
Oof.
Her personal life began making headlines when she started seeing Elvis Presley in 1957.
Holy shit.
She was 29 and he was 22.
Oh.
In the documentary I've referenced a couple times, which is just called Tempest Storm, the filmmaker, whose name is Nimisha Mukherjee, Tempest tells this really delightful story about Elvis Presley, calling her up one night while she was I think she was in LA. She said she was headlining at the Dunes, and I assume that was in LA, but it could have been Las Vegas. I wasn't quite sure on that. He wanted to see her desperately. It's like 3 a.m, she said.
Oh, jeez.
And she was like, well, I'm in this hotel and you're not walking through that lobby. If you walk through that lobby, everybody's going to know you're coming to my room, and I don't want that.
Yeah.
And so he was like, okay, well, is there a back way I can get to you? And she said, well, there is a back way, but there's a really tall fence and you'd have to climb it. So Elvis Presley climbed a fence to get to Tempest, and he split his pants in the process. Oh, no. Well, now I don't have to undress you, she said.
Nice.
And also in the documentary, she said, I taught Elvis everything he knew.
Oh my goodness. I love it. I am living for this.
Another famous paramour of hers around that same time was then Senator John F. Kennedy.
Kennedy liked to get it.
His buxom women. By the way, Tempest eventually became Fire Engine Redhead.
Oh.
Like initially she had really dark hair, but almost within like the first couple months of her being a stripper, she changed her hair color.
Oh.
And that remained her hair color for the rest of her life.
Okay.
So she started seeing JFK, who she met up with frequently at the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C. Tempest said that being with him made her feel like a teenager again. Their affair was secret, and she was always really demure about it until one time she was being asked about it on a by a television host.
Oh.
And the television host kept like kind of skirting around, and she kept being like, "Oh, we're good friends.
Yeah.
Oh, we talk." We're, And so finally this interviewer was like, "What do you talk about?" And she goes, "It certainly wasn't politics."
Oh, the shade.
Tempest was also a contemporary of one Ms. Marilyn Monroe. In fact, they were neighbors for a brief time, and it seems like they must have chatted enough because Tempest talks in the documentary about the two of them, and she said that Marilyn did the sort of dumb blonde character to satirize what everybody thought about her.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, which is very clear. And then when she played the dumb blonde, everybody could see she was really intelligent. And I think that was an interesting thing for Tempest to really look at and talk about, because I think that that's kind of what people thought about her. She was this very well-endowed, sexy woman who took her clothes off for a living, Like, I think people made the assumption that she was dumb, or I don't even know. People have like really negative assumptions about people who work in sex work and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And
everybody
and
wants
dancing.
it, but everybody looks down on it.
Yeah, which is really dumb.
Yeah.
So I think that she really found some solace and some connection with somebody like Marilyn, who had her body used and decided, if that's what I'm going to be known for, then I'm going to take control of the narrative and create my own story. And I think that's what Tempest did as well. So Tempest is at the height of her career, making $100,000 a year, performing 4 to 6 shows a day.
A day?
7 days a week.
My gosh.
In theaters that were sold out, more than 2,000 seat theaters.
That would be exhausting.
Exhausting.
So much energy.
Reportedly, at this point, her breasts were insured by Lloyd's of London for $1 million.
Interesting.
That's like, who was it that had their legs insured? Is that Naomi Campbell?
I'm not
Somebody
sure. It was a supermodel.
Supermodel had their legs insured.
I get my ass insured.
Maybe J-Lo has her ass insured. She was far and away the most famous and financially successful burlesque dancer in the country, if not the world. She was so sought after that when she visited the University of Colorado in 1955, she caused a riot.
Oh, Jesus.
The male students were so riled up by her removing nothing but a mink coat. They stormed forward and caused hundreds of dollars worth of damage.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of scary though.
Oh, I would be terrified.
Yeah.
Get her off
like,
the damn stage.
I'm out.
Yeah. That's like...
What are they going to do if they get her?
Yeah, exactly. What I don't like it. It made me very uncomfortable. But nothing bad did happen from it other than the damage to the university. Do you know who Gary Marshall is?
Mm-mm.
He's a really famous director, and I know you know his work. Probably his most famous film is Pretty Woman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He's known for directing tons and tons of things.
Okay.
He's very famous. So Gary Marshall was a young man when he went to see Tempest perform. She had this beautiful boudoir set on stage. She had a chaise lounge, mirrors, French windows. Mm-hmm. And she would always wear these beautiful gowns and like robes, and she would have boas, feather boas. Mm-hmm. And then underneath, she always in the documentary, she holds up a pair of rhinestoned white G-string.
Oh, cool.
And she was like, I put these rhinestones on here. She was like, when you go on stage, you can't go on with a pair of plain panties. So Gary Marshall had seen her when he was quite a young man, and he said, like, this is him talking like in 2015 about her. So he's like nearly dead because he just died like a year or so ago.
Oh.
And he still remembered her very fondly. He said that she had a way about her. The way she took off her clothes was, quote, artistic. He said she had magic. And as I mentioned when we talked about Fanny Bryce, the burlesque shows were comedy shows, satire shows. Mm-hmm. And when Tempest gets into burlesque, it is at the time when burlesque is kind of waning, right? Because remember, Fanny Bryce had like left burlesque because it was no longer people going to see it. Mm-hmm. It was like radio shows and television shows.
Yeah, I mean, things were changing.
So this is the time at which Tempest really kind of gets into the business, is when it's like at its tail end. And so the strippers became the show. Like that's what the headline was. And there were always still comedians that were in the shows. But Gary Marshall said that he can't remember any of the comedians' names, but I sure remember yours. It's at her peak of success at this time when she's like rolling high, when Tempest meets and falls in love with Herb Jeffries. Herb was a very famous musician at the time who appeared in many black cowboy films and toured with Duke Ellington's band. Their relationship immediately caused controversy. Despite the fact that Herb could definitely pass for white, and in fact frequently darkened his skin for movies to appear more black, the idea of a white burlesque dancer marrying a black musician was cause for much scandal.
Yeah.
It was in like all the gossip rags and in mainstream news. People were up in arms. But the two went ahead anyway, and they married at the courthouse in 1959. And Herb's mother had made Tempest's wedding gown, and they had a small, very small, intimate celebration. Almost immediately, Tempest faced blowback from marrying Herb. Lillian Hunt dropped her entirely and never spoke to her again.
Are you serious?
Louis Mayer, who at the time was the head of MGM Studios, had been eyeing Tempest to basically create a film star out of her, a la Marilyn Monroe. And as soon as she married Herb, he ended all ties with her.
Yikes.
So this marriage was a big deal. You know, she sacrificed a lot to marry him. Tempest was still able to tour and make money, but her career had taken quite a hit. She left Herb home alone a lot because she was on tour.
Yeah.
Even after she gave birth to their child, Patricia Jeffries, in 1963, when Tempest was 35. Tempest was taking care of the whole family with her career, and they became known as the first family of burlesque. She occasionally brought Patricia on tour with her, and Tempest actually said that once while she was performing in New York, the crowd was like, "Ah!" And she was like, okay, but like, I'm just like rolling my shoulder. Like, why are they screaming and hooting and hollering? And so she like turns a little and sees that Patricia is on stage dancing.
No.
It wasn't long though before Herb became intensely jealous and believed that
It always
Tempest
seems to go that way.
Yeah, he believed Tempest was sleeping around when she was on tour. So I'm going to play a clip from the documentary about her talking about the marriage and its eventual demise.
It was the 60s. My career was riding high, and I was really becoming bigger and bigger. Herb and I were married 10 years. When we were together, things were good, and when we were apart is when all the trouble started. I had engagements. I was booked all over the country. And if I was on the road, he'd call me and say, "Who you sleeping with tonight?" And here I'd done 4 or 5 shows. Then I discovered he had gone to court, and he said I was an unfit mother. I found all the papers up in the cupboard. I never told him I saw that. I was going to Miami on an engagement. And I remember my flight was early in the morning. I remember going to my daughter's room. She said, "Are you coming back this time, Mother?" I went to Florida. I went and got an apartment and never went back. And that's the way that I left.
That's sad.
Yeah, it was pretty hard, right?
Yeah. But it just seems like that's always like the narrative of like when a woman is doing something for herself, especially in the industry of entertainment, the husband who's left behind is always like what they loved about that person becomes like what they hate about that person.
Yeah, I think Fanny Bryce faced that too.
Yeah.
Especially with her second husband, which I didn't really talk much about in the last episode I did, but that was very much what characterized their marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think there's something really interesting about that. You know, there are so many men who are allowed to be absent and be career driven, and they don't get painted with the brush of being bad men or bad fathers. Mm-hmm. They're just working hard for their family.
Oh, yeah. And if they leave, then, they left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think when a woman does it, it's just perceived differently. And in the case of Tempest, I don't think that she was a good mother. You know, I mean, so she says after this clip that when that she left, and Patricia was 10 when she left.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't get in touch with her child again for another 10 years.
So she just left. And
she
then...
left and just acted like Patricia wasn't even alive.
Yikes.
So I'm going to talk more about the family situation later in our episode, but I do think that it's worth really investigating and thinking about critically about how we feel about men who do stuff like this versus women who do stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
And that we do have a little bit of a double standard.
Mm-hmm.
So in the 1970s, Tempest's agent has a great idea to do something different because at this point, like, burlesque shows aren't bringing in as much money. They're not being booked as often.
Mm-hmm.
So he wanted to send her out on tour with a rock band called the James Gang, who I had never heard of before.
No.
They were like semi-famous at the time.
Okay.
Instead of an opening band, the James Gang had like basically like a little circus show. And the headliner of that was Tempest.
Okay.
So Tempest was their opener. The tour was a massive hit. She was allowed to perform at every venue on their tour except one. I think it was Utah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, they have some pretty archaic rules. And when the tour was set to end at Carnegie Hall in New York City,
Wow.
no one believed a stripper would be allowed to perform on the famous stage. In fact, she was in Kentucky with the band and like had been interviewed by a music journalist, and the music journalist was like, "Where are you headed to next?" And she said Carnegie Hall, and he laughed. And she was like, "No, I'm serious." And so the journalist called Carnegie Hall and said, "Are you really going to have a stripper on stage at Carnegie Hall?" And Carnegie Hall was like, "No, we are not going to do that."
Oh.
Nope, sorry. So the band got mad and they were like, "Well, if you don't let her perform, we won't perform." So eventually Carnegie Hall agreed to allow Tempest to perform on stage as long as they do not advertise her performance.
Okay.
And that meant that Tempest Storm became the first and only stripper to ever perform on stage at Carnegie Hall. Tempest continued to perform throughout the 80s, 90s, and into the aughts.
Really?
She moved to Las Vegas, where the rules about striptease were a lot more lax and business was more fruitful. She also began traveling and booked to go to burlesque festivals all across the country and various burlesque shows, making appearances and signing autographs. As she told Gary Marshall in 2014, there is no such thing as a retirement fund for burlesque dancers. So she continued to do like strip shows, actual strip teases, until 2012.
Wow.
At the Miss Exotic World pageant in 2012, she was to be the featured headliner for the Legends Showcase. And she's on stage. There's video of it in the documentary. You watch it, and it's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
Towards the end of the performance, something happened to cause her to slip and fall on stage.
Oh, no.
She passed out and broke her hip.
Oh, no.
Forcing her into semi-retirement at age 86.
But that was mortifying.
Oh, it's really awful to watch. Tempest continued to still appear at festivals. She just didn't perform. She would like walk out on stage and wave or whatever, but she didn't dance.
Yeah.
She definitely did that until at least 2014. The last few years of her career are documented in this documentary called Tempest Storm by Namisha Mukherjee, who wanted to make this documentary about Tempest, who followed her around for a couple years. So Mukherjee pitched the project to a number of broadcasters and financiers who all felt like the project was just not it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't going to be a moneymaker. Boo. But she was like, no, I think this is like something that people would be interested in.
Yeah.
So in 2013, she started her own Kickstarter campaign and raised $45,000 in a month.
Oh,
so finally,
nice.
She was able to get like the film made, and once she got like some movement, you know, they did want to back it and like make it. But male industry executives wanted her to leave out Tempest's experiences as a survivor of sexual assault and lean more heavily into her famous love affairs.
Okay, but that's a pretty significant part of her life, though.
And it really like made her who she is.
Yeah.
So Mukherjee told the Toronto Star that, quote, "It was very upsetting. We just said, that's not the film we're trying to make."
No.
I also think that it glosses over like the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Mukherjee wanted to show Tempest Storm, the woman who endured, the woman who had survived, who had made a business and a career for herself, even at the cost of like losing her entire family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she also cut off all contact with her Georgia family.
Just going to ask that. I was like, mom and stepdad and siblings, nothing?
Not really. Like in the documentary, she goes to Georgia, and that's the first time in 18 years that she's seen her siblings.
Wow.
And that was filmed, I think, in 2014.
Did they know that she had become famous?
Yeah, they all knew who she was. In fact, in the documentary, a niece who lived somewhere else I can't remember if she lived somewhere else in Georgia, but it was like she traveled when they found out Tempest was coming. She traveled to come see her and had Tempest's autobiography that she had written in the 80s and wanted her to sign it because she was like, you probably don't even remember me because I was a little girl.
Mm.
Like they really loved her. In fact, her sister was so mad. She was like, "How do you still look this good?" Because she does look damn good.
Yeah.
You should see her body.
Oh.
At her age, I was like, what? What?
Unfair.
Well, she talks about, I appreciate this. She talks about when people ask her, like, how do you maintain your figure? How do you continue to live as well as you do? And she was like, listen, I never drank. I never smoked. I never did drugs. I always dieted. I always exercised. I drank lots of water. I stayed out of the sun.
Oh, there you go.
She also started taking estrogen in the 70s.
Really?
1970s.
Okay.
Yeah. So she was born in 1928. So she's probably around 50 when she started taking it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little younger. And she's like, I never went off it. So she's like, I credit that for helping. But she also talked about how age is like, she just never believed. She's like, I don't even know my age. She was like, I don't even think about it.
Wow.
My age is whatever I think I am.
So it's not just, what she practices. It's like what she believes in for herself.
And she, in the documentary, you see her hands when she's like signing autographs, very clearly has terrible rheumatoid arthritis. Because my mama had that. And her knuckles looked very similar to
that.
My great aunts. Yeah. So this film is heartbreaking in many ways because Mukherjee painstakingly chronicles Tempest's attempts to reconnect with her now adult child, Patricia.
Okay.
At one point, Tempest flies to Evansville, Indiana to try to see Patricia. You see her call Patricia multiple times and leave voice messages and never get a phone call back. And one of them is like, "Merry Christmas. I love you and I miss you." And it's like kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So she flies to Indiana to see Patricia, but it does not go well. So she calls Patricia and she says, "I'm here in Indiana. I'm at the Holiday Inn. And
if you want to see me."
And leaves that in a voice message, right?
Yeah.
And so then she gets a call back and it's Patricia.
Oh no.
And you can the microphone picks up Patricia on the other side of the phone. And then the documentarians put the text on there so you can see what Patricia is saying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's questions like, what are you doing here? When was the last time you came? When did you last see your granddaughter? How old was she? How old is she now?
Can't blame her though.
Nope.
I mean, she had a mother and then she didn't, and probably shattered her world.
And even at this point, it has been when Patricia asks Tempest, when was the last time you saw your granddaughter and how old was she? The last time Tempest had seen Kiana was 10 years old. And now Kiana is 21.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, she has this pattern of coming and going and leaving people in the dust for decades. And I think it's really interesting in the documentary because it's very clear. The documentary is really showing Tempest's life, but it's also really showing this, like, this is the end of her life. She very much knows that, like, the end is coming. Mm-hmm. And you can see her trying to reconnect and, like, establish that family structure again. She goes to Georgia, right? And sees all of her siblings. She goes to her father's grave, the one who was her real bio dad. And of course, just the fact that she hired a genealogist to try to figure out her father.
Yeah.
Like, she's very clearly reaching out to try to get this connection. And I do think that that's because she knows that her time is almost up. Mm-hmm. And in fact, in the movie, Herb Jeffries is dying.
Oh.
And she goes to see him.
How was that between them?
He was delighted to see her.
I mean, the decision, was the marriage and the jealousy that bad that she decided to leave not just him, but her daughter?
Well, I think, honestly, I mean, Herb filed that paperwork calling her an unfit mother, mm-hmm. and I think there's probably something to that. The fact that she's been pretty absent in Patricia's adult life in mm-hmm. addition to her childhood, or their childhood, I should say, like, that's pretty intense. So Patricia's pain over their mother's abandonment is very palpable in the film. As they point out, "We're your only family, and your career has always come first. I can't forgive and forget. What you did changed my whole life, and it still affects me." And finally, Patricia tells Tempest, "I don't want you coming to my house and ringing my doorbell." Tempest is like, okay, I won't come. It's okay. I'll try you again. Another time. At the end of the documentary, Tempest asked herself, what was the payoff for all of this hard work? I made it to the top, and I'm still up there. But sometimes I wonder, was it really worth it? Tempest Storm and her child never reconciled. Mm-hmm. Tempest died on April 20th, 2021. So about 2 weeks ago at the time of our recording.
Oh, whoa.
She was 93 years old. Tempest's child, Patricia, went on to work as a burlesque dancer as an adult, a burlesque and exotic dancer, under the name Summer Storm. But eventually quit that business and settled in Indiana, where they now perform as a drag king under the name Brock Harder.
Love it.
Yeah, great.
So Patricia ended up doing the same thing.
And Patricia is either called Brock or Trish, and they are non-binary, trans-masculine.
Good to know.
Yeah. So that's why I was trying to be very careful about calling Patricia Tempest's child and not daughter, because that's
not who they
not how they identify. Tempest Storm was obviously an incredibly complicated, beautiful woman whose story is both tragic and inspirational. Mm-hmm. She worked her ass off. And at the end of her life, she fulfilled one of her lifelong dreams. She had always wanted to design fashion. And it brings me back to that moment when she made that white dress.
Yeah.
And so she talks about how that's been a lifelong dream of hers. And in her 80s, she gets the opportunity to finally do that. There's a designer in Las Vegas called Tatiana Designs who teams up with her, and they design, I don't know if it's a line of dresses, but it was like, you know those rockabilly girls mm-hmm. and people who are like really into Betty Page and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah.
So they design a dress that is Tempest Storm's dress. And she goes to the Burlesque Hall of Fame in Las Vegas. It's one of her last appearances in her life. And women are lined up to get her autograph, as usual. Mm-hmm. Many of them wearing the very dress that she designed. That night, she was introduced on stage as, quote, the undisputed queen of burlesque. All hail the queen.
What a roller coaster of a life.
A roller coaster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh. She's like the perfect tragic figure, honestly.
Yeah. Just with the clip that I watched and like her face on the screen of saying, the end of her family, of like how that stopped. Her face looks so sad.
Really,
Yeah.
just devastated.
It's just pained. Pain. It looks like pain.
When she hangs up the phone after Patricia says, like, no, do not come to my door. Ugh.
And then questioning, was it all worth it? It's like, what a fucking hard spot to be in where you have to choose.
I'm someone who is estranged from my mother, and I was watching this and I just kept thinking, if my mother had tried, I think I would respond. Mm-hmm. But my mother never tried.
No.
Like she's still not trying. Like,
yeah.
It's not like she's calling me.
But I know you, and I know that you would probably respond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If my mom showed up in Spokane and said, I want to see you, I would drop everything. Mm-hmm. Because that's all I've ever wanted, is for her to do any work.
Yeah.
So it was hard for me to watch Tempest do that. Like, clearly wanting to reconcile. And I'm not in their shoes. I have no idea what that relationship was like, what kind of pain and torment that they went through. But I know if I were their child, I would be like, okay, one more time. Because it's very clear, like, she's old. Mm-hmm. She is going to die quite soon.
On the other end too, like, I can't blame them either because of that turning their world upside down.
And who knows how many times maybe she's tried this. Maybe she's tried to reconcile, but it's always like on her terms.
Yeah. And my husband is estranged from his mother. Hasn't spoken to her in probably, I'd say, about 5 or 6 years. And I have not seen her in 11 years. And she did one out of the blue. It had been like 5 years. She called and Nick was like, it's my mother. And I was like, well, are you going to answer it? And he answers it and he's like, hello. And I can hear, and no, I don't. No. Okay. And hangs up. And I said, what was that? And he goes, she said that she had let us borrow a pot. And do we still have the pot? And he's like, fuck her. He's like, she didn't want to, she couldn't do it. She couldn't do it. So instead she's going to make up some bullshit story. And he's like, that's not what I want. If you want to talk to me, then talk to me. So, and then she's never called again.
Yeah. I mean, I think that relationship is so hard. When you finally made the decision to cut off ties, it's never made lightly. Like, no one is like, I just don't feel like it. It's like a painful decision that you make, and you weigh lots and lots of things as to whether it's going to continue to be the right decision for yourself.
And people have judged my husband, and I'm always backing him up. I'm like, you have no idea what she did to him. And so you cannot judge him for protecting himself.
Yeah, I feel that same way about the situation with Trish, right? Like, I'm not in their shoes. I don't know what that relationship was like. I just know, as someone who's desperately wanted my mother to reach out and want to reconcile and apologize, I would do anything to have gotten that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that would really make my whole world different. Yeah. So I felt really a lot of pain for both of them.
It's just awful.
Yeah, it's a
all
terrible
around
situation.
Yeah.
But, you know, and Herb dies, right? In the course of the film, she goes to see Herb at the end of his life. He's thrilled to see her.
And it had been decades for them too. Crazy.
And he's just thrilled beyond measure to see her. That's pretty tragic too, because he has a new wife. I use that term loosely. He's obviously been married to her for quite some time.
Yeah.
But a different wife,
Yeah.
right? And who's much younger, very obviously much younger. And she says that he had to take a medication, like he had been prescribed a medication at some point that had caused him to lose his voice.
Oh no.
And he was a country musician. Like that's how he made his like life. To never be able to sing again.
Oh no.
It's like so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So he died. I think
This is also, my heart hurts right now.
So he died when he was like 100 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And he was still in Los Angeles, I believe. And of course Tempest lives in Vegas. So I don't think Trish had anything to do with either of them.
Really?
And just my heart hurts for them.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the story of Tempest Storm.
That's
Tragic,
really amazing.
but great.
Should be a movie.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, it is a documentary, but I think it could be a fictional film as well. Like
And the documentary is called just Tempest Storm. Okay.
And currently it is free on YouTube to watch the whole documentary
Ooh, I'm gonna
in
watch it.
honor of her passing. So the filmmaker made the choice to make it free on YouTube so people could remember her.
That's awesome.
Another thing I didn't put in my notes, but I think it's worth mentioning, is that Jack White became very enamored with Tempest and did an interview with her that he released as an album.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so that's one of my sources. I also used, obviously, the documentary and the interview with Roger Ebert from 1968, a New York Times obituary by Marguerite Fox, an article called Burlesque Legend Storm Forecast for Festival by David Burke for the Quad City Times, Storm Still Packs a Wallop by Stephen Wynn for the San Francisco Chronicle, Teasing Out the Story of Burlesque Legend Tempest Storm by Patty Winsa for the Toronto Star, Wikipedia, brockharder.com,
Nice.
and a profile of Brock Harder on ourcommunityroots.com.
Very good. I apologize also for misgendering Brock. I didn't realize.
Yeah, I was trying to I didn't know how to tell. Because it's like when they're a child. And of course, Tempest refers to them as her daughter.
Oh.
In the documentary. I know. I was like, I don't know how much Brock/Trish told Tempest, because they weren't close. Maybe Tempest had no idea. I don't know. I know my mom has no idea.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
she out there misgendering me all over the place if she even mentions my name or talks about me. But she doesn't know.
Yeah.
Because we don't talk. So
True.
that's the story of Tempest Storm.
Oh, that was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to watch that doc. Seriously. Because
Yes.
I want to see it.
I think it's worth watching. In fact, I'll probably post it on our Facebook page for sure.
Awesome. I wonder what happened to all her costumes and stuff.
Yeah. So at the end of her life in the documentary, she has a new manager. And I can't tell if they're romantically involved. It seems like they are, but I can't quite tell. It was never spelled out. And he probably is the one who has all of her stuff.
Yeah. Like her estate, probably.
Yeah. And I think one of her G-strings is in a museum.
I would imagine.
Yeah. I think he might have inherited everything.
Oh.
I'm not really sure on that. He was a weird guy. He has a curly mullet. You can't miss it.
No, thanks.
Tight curls too. Like a poodle.
No. Oh, well, we'd like to thank our editor, Lucas McIntyre.
Yes, thank you, Lucas. Also, folks, especially our Patreon subscribers, we recorded a Patreon episode in April that just did not make it onto the Patreon website. And so that's our fault. It's going to be there very soon. So look for that in your inboxes. And thank you for subscribing. And if you are interested in getting that extra bonus content, you should become a subscriber.
You should do it.
Please do. You'll get t-shirts and stickers and shit.
And we'll love you
forever and ever.
Also, big thanks to Jennifer Finch from L7 for our kick-ass theme music.
Yes, thank you. And thank you all for listening.
All right, till next time.
Goodbye.